We start at 5 with breaking news. One person in the hospital with life-threatening injuries. This after being stabbed this afternoon inside of a Barnes Noble store. Police say they have someone in custody. This is the store near 30th and Pearl in Boulder. Police say that suspect got into a confrontation with the victim, a store employee. That's what resulted in a stabbing. Police again describing the victim with life-threatening injuries. Of course, we continue to try to get more updates. We'll share them with you as they come into the newsroom.
Charges against a Denver officer for shooting in Lodo is another example of law enforcement being indicted for how they respond. Yeah, police officer Brandon Ramos has not yet appeared in court, but is facing several charges. That includes felony assault. He was one of 3 Denver police officers to fire a gun that night, but the grand jury found the other 2 officers had clear shots without anyone behind the suspect. Body camera video shows that was not the case for Brandon Ramos. We have seen other examples of grand juries trying to hold law enforcement accountable, like the Elijah McClain and Christian Glass cases. 9 News reporter Luis De Leon explains the impact that has had on police training.
Video is a wonderful aid to the justice system.
And 9 News legal expert Scott Robinson believes that video played a big role in leading a grand jury to indict Denver police officer Brandon Ramos.
The use of grand juries is an important tool in law enforcement.
Historically, he says officers are rarely charged with any kind of criminal offense in a police shooting where a suspect has a gun, which Denver police say was the case for 21-year-old Jordan Waddy. The grand jury found Ramos's decision to fire reckless and unreasonable. The outcomes of these shootings are communicated in the training of officers even outside of Colorado.
Naturally, part of the training must cover the potential liability, both criminal and civil ramifications for police officers involved in use of force situations, not just shootings themselves.
Use of force expert Ed Obayashi trains law enforcement in California and works cases like this into training.
But what I emphasize is that we're living in a very different law enforcement environment than we did a few years ago. We want to constantly develop training, especially obviously in use of force and deadly force. But I do advise them, you're an officer, do what you think is right based on your training.
But he also believes that the prominence of these indictments could impact things like recruiting or morale.
It's a very different atmosphere for the deputies and officers to think that, gee, I could be the next one. I could be the next guinea pig for a prosecutor.
Ramos is suspended without pay due to the charges, which is standard. He's also not been on patrol since the shooting. Now, Scott Robinson, that you heard from a moment ago there, says the charges against Ramos are not based on intentional acts, but rather on recklessness and negligence. So Kim Robinson also believes having a jury weighing in on that specifically would be more reliable than leaving it all solely to an elected prosecutor.
Yeah, interesting. And then that body camera video tells a lot, and that's going to be part of both sides of that case.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Thank you, Luis.
A 20-year-old man is going to serve 2 back-to-back life sentences for the killing and robbery of a couple who thought they were buying a vehicle from him. Kyrie Brown placed an ad on the app Let's Go to sell a car, but that was a stolen car, and Brown used a fake name. Joe and Jocelyn Rowland didn't know any of that when they met with him in Aurora back in August of 2020. So instead of getting a car, they were murdered, and Brown took the cash that they had brought for the sale. Brown was found guilty of 12 different charges last year. And an investigation is underway after police officers shot and killed a man in Frederick. The critical incident response team that's investigating says it started with a shots fired call from 7th Street near Frederick High School at about 11:30 last night. Authorities say when officers arrived, a person in the home fired at them. Officers fired back, hitting and killing the man. Several other police departments had also responded to the call. No one else was hurt. Police have yet to publicly name that suspect.
The parents of Christian Glass are pushing for more investigations into the other officers on the scene the night their son was shot and killed by a Clear Creek County deputy. The deputy who shot and killed their son was indicted for second-degree murder and is awaiting trial. An outside investigation into the shooting released this week found Deputy Andrew Bune violated department policy when he broke Christian's window and shot and killed him. There were 6 other officers on scene during the shooting, none criminally charged in Christian's death. Sally and Simon Glass say, just like the department investigated Bune, all of those officers should face similar scrutiny.
I'm amazed that there were 7 of them up there. There was a guy standing on the bonnet of his car, for God's sake, pointing a gun at him, standing on the bonnet of his car. What sort of behaviour is that?
This is an opportunity for people, I mentioned the agencies, the county, the state, the country, to look at this and say, we don't want this to happen again. This sort of thing is got to stop. Here are the things that we did wrong.
9 News has reached out to all of the agencies involved that night, and we've only heard back from one, the Colorado State Patrol. They say that they take no personnel action against the trooper who was on the scene that night.
One victim says the sentencing of 2 funeral directors in Montrose is not enough after they admitted to illegally selling body parts of people who were supposed to be cremated. Megan Hess and Shirley Koch each pleaded guilty to mail fraud. This after selling parts of hundreds of bodies to entities around the world. Hess got a sentence of 20 years, Koch got 15. 9 News reporter Nelson Garcia now shows us their sentences aren't enough for one victim's daughter.
This day in court was a long time coming for Erin Smith.
My mom passed away in 2011 suddenly of cancer.
Smith brought Marianne Hamilton to Sunset Mesa Funeral Home in Montrose to be cremated, so she thought. In 2018, the FBI contacted her about allegations against the funeral directors about selling her mother's body parts.
It was like she died all over again. This whole thing has been worse than losing her mother.
Smith says her organs from her mother's heart to liver and even her hands and feet were sold to so-called body brokers.
It's clear that there need to be more protections.
The funeral directors in Colorado, I believe, are the only ones out of all the states that are not regulated with a license.
Republican State Representative Matt Soper has already sponsored new laws to tighten oversight of funeral homes.
Certainly what needs to happen is there needs to be continuing education, not just in mortuary science, but there needs to be continuing education in mortuary ethics.
The hope is that by these rules and law changes, we can avoid anything else that might happen, like Sunset Mesa.
Joe Walsh is president of the Funeral Directors Association. He agrees changes should be made.
It is my belief that if you are an ethical and honorable funeral director and funeral home owner, you're going to do the right thing, and the laws don't bother you, and they shouldn't bother you because you are doing the right thing.
For the sake of her mom and the hundreds of other victims, Smith says this issue is not over.
In many ways, for me personally, it feels a little bit like the healing begins now.
The healing, she says, and the change. Nelson Garcia, 9 News.
As Denver continues to seek resources for migrant families, we're hearing from some of the migrants for the first time. One family we spoke to from Venezuela says it's a relief to be here. It took them 4 months and the trek was dangerous, mainly on foot. The most dangerous stretch was in Panama's Darien Gap, a jungle.
En la selva del Darién duramos 10 días.
Dentro de la selva.
Pasamos por
río, pantano, lodo.
Lluvia,
ríos, una experiencia muy fuerte.
Sí, es como una excursión pero más escalofriante.
Sí, muchas personas muertas, muchas personas muriéndose también.
This family is currently being sheltered at Regis University, where the city asked them to have an emergency shelter set up to help accommodate families. Right now, they are serving 13 families, which include 27 adults and 17 children.
Our focus really was to provide the shelter, provide the food, and really prepare them for their next step. Yes, I would say that the joy and just knowing that they had a safe place to not only be welcome but also spend a week with us was also very, very much welcomed by the families.
Regis says right now the most urgent need really is for monetary donations to continue supporting the families. They also have a list of items they could use as well, with more information available on our website with a direct link on how you can donate.
Today, of course, is a different day. The story, though, is the same in Washington. 10 votes have now been taken. An 11th is underway, yet we still don't have a Speaker of the House. The day started with optimism from Kevin McCarthy, despite the fact that he'd lost 6 votes over the past 2 days. Well, today McCarthy agreed to some concessions from the 20 far right-wing lawmakers that have been blocking him on the Republican side, but the 4 votes already done today show that still is not enough. Colorado's Lauren Boebert's been front and center in the voting process all week, speaking out as one of those 20 Republicans. But several fellow Republicans are speaking out against her, saying it's all for the attention. The House certainly can't conduct any actual business until a speaker has been chosen.
We are moving closer, I can't believe I did that, to the National Western Stock Show. We'll take you to the parade that kicked things off for this year's event.
They're calling this year a critical one for the Colorado River. There's already been some significant improvement. We'll see about that coming up straight ahead.